Okay, Chair Lesfeld, we are ready to go.
All right, just a second. Yeah. All right. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the meeting to order and welcome you to the regular meeting of the Milwaukie Planning Commission. Agendas and additional copies of staff reports are available on the city website at www.milwaukeeoregon.gov. You may locate them by navigating to the community calendar where tonight's meeting page is posted. If you have not reviewed the agenda, please do. It contains important information about our process this evening. I will be starting with our native land acknowledgement. The city of Milwaukie respectfully acknowledges that our community is located on ancestral homeland of the Clackamas people. In 1855, the surviving members of the Clackamas signed the Willamette Valley Treaty, also known as the Kalipuya, etc. treaty with the federal government in good faith. We offer our respect and gratitude to the indigenous people of this land. First, we'll go then to informational items. Are there any informational items from staff?
Chair Lesfeld, I would just like to offer one update that the code amendment package for middle housing, parking, and the tree code is going to the City Council on the 19th, so a week from tonight. And we expect a vote of adoption that night. So just letting folks know to tune in to the City Council hearing on the 19th.
Okay.
That's all I have. Thank you.
All right. Audience participation. This is an opportunity to comment on items not on tonight's agenda. Does anyone wish to comment on an item that is not on tonight's agenda? If you do, please use the raise your hand function in Zoom or *9 if you are on the phone, and I'll just give a couple brief moments here for anybody who may want to do so, and ask staff to take a look and see if we've got anybody interested.
Chair Lesfeld, I don't see anyone with their hand raised, and I don't see any emails having come in either. So I think we're good to go.
All right, so now is the CIAC opportunity. So at this point in the agenda, the Planning Commission will act as the Community Involvement Advisory Committee. I now ask staff to provide any updates.
Chair Lesfeld, Laura Weigel asked me to communicate with you folks that there were 8 attendees at the Land Use 101 training, including Robert Massey was there as well. Thank you very much. So just letting you folks know that that's how many were there. We will be posting that as kind of as a presentation on the city's webpage as well for folks to be able to see later. And also as a follow-up, that staff will be working on a land use notification training that's more in-depth so folks know how that works and what that process is like here for the planning department as well. But those are the 2 updates that Laura gave us.
Okay. Do CIAC members have any items to report? If you do, go ahead and raise your hand. And does anyone in the audience wish to speak with the Planning Commission in their role as the CIAC? Please use the raise your hand function.
I don't see any hands raised. No.
And then I just maybe want to take a moment here since we are acting as the CIAC. I'd just like to see or have the opportunity to engage and interact more with our leadership from the neighborhood community groups. And if I think I don't think we're exercising the full potential of this CIAC. And I guess I would like to put the challenge up there, maybe to get greater involvement from our community groups so that we can adequately use this time to help spur on greater relationships and communicate events and activities that are going on in the community. So I guess that is maybe a request to make of staff, Vera, and that we should continue this conversation because the Planning Commission has been acting as the CIAC for several months now, and I'm hoping that we can get more productive conversation out of these meetings in the future. Yes, Commissioner Massey, I'm seeing your hands raised.
Yeah, this is just a thought that came across my mind is that I too am concerned that we have limited interaction with the neighborhood associations. We kind of put ourselves on the hook to meet at least once a year, and I think that's good. But I think that it might be useful if we do more. And I kind of go back to what we did when we were considering the comprehensive plan, and that several of us sort of took it on ourselves to go and talk to a number of the NDAs. And rather than talking, it might be us going and listening and that kind of thing. I would be willing to do something like that, but I'm certainly not going to sign up the whole Planning Commission to do that. But that's just a thought.
Are you suggesting, Commissioner Massey, that rather than asking those folks to show up here, that we are more actively going to them, or just in addition to this?
I think it would be in addition to.
Okay, understood. Yep. And Commissioner Hemer?
So I am probably the one that attends their NDA on a most regular basis. In fact, I miss as many Planning Commission meetings as I do my NDA meetings. And so I would encourage all of you maybe to take that very first step and join your NDA. If there are others that are willing to maybe just go to an NDA, there are 7 NDAs. There are 2, 4, 6, 7 of us. So maybe we could assign an NDA where you could be an inactive participant. May not be a bad idea. And I will volunteer myself for Linwood.
Yeah, I think that's a good conversation to start. And I think maybe there's a poll that we can do, Vera, to see if others would volunteer to do the same, not to put anyone on the spot here. I would volunteer to be part of Island Station, which I am just outside the boundary of. Yeah. So anyways, just want to kind of air some thoughts here, thinking that we're not quite using this time to the best of its value, having all of us here. And Commissioner Sherman, have your comments, and then we'll wrap this up.
Great. Thanks, Chair Losfeld. Certainly on the email distribution for my NDA here in Ardenwald and paying attention to some of those issues, I did just want to flag. I know that when we kind of agreed or didn't agree to take on these responsibilities as the CIAC, I know that we also had some concerns about just our own bandwidth as volunteers. And, so I just wanted to kind of flag for us all to consider as we're signing up to attend an additional meeting a month, that we're being cognizant of those issues as well. So, I don't know who that comment is necessarily directed at. Maybe it's just us as a board, but wanted to make sure we were being thoughtful about that.
Definitely hear you on that. I think that's why I don't want to put anybody on point here to sign up or to volunteer, but I think we just need to rethink this format. So I'll ask staff to help follow up with that. I'll go to the agenda again and just keep moving us forward, but I appreciate you all chiming in on that. First hearing item this evening, let's get to it. The public hearing on the proposed construction, a manufacturing light industrial building and required variance at 9285 Southeast 58th Drive is called again to order. The purpose of this hearing is to consider applicant number VR-2021-012. The purpose of the application is to request approval of the various applications associated with the construction of manufacturing light industrial building at 9285 Southeast 58th Drive. The applicant has the burden of proving that the application is consistent with the City of Milwaukee's zoning subdivision ordinance. comprehensive plan, and any applicable municipal code provisions, and that the proposal conforms with all of the city's applicable criteria. I now ask staff to cite the zoning ordinance sections or section where this criteria can be found.
Milwaukee Municipal Code, Title 12, Section 16, Access Management. Municipal Code, Section 19.309, Manufacturing Zone. 19.600, Off-Street Parking and Loading. 19.700, Public Facility Improvements. 19.906, Development Review. And 19.911, Variances.
Thank you, Vera. All testimony and evidence must be directed toward the applicable substantive criteria. Failure to address a criterion or raise an issue with sufficient detail to allow the Planning Commission an adequate opportunity to respond to each issue precludes appeal to the City Council based on that issue. Failure to raise constitutional or otherwise related to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient detail to allow a response precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Any part of the standing may appeal decisions of the Planning Commission to the City Council. Persons with standing are those who submit written comments or testify in person or via Zoom. Conduct of our hearing tonight. If you are here to testify, please remember to confine your remarks to the application and relevant criteria, and to avoid repetition and non-relevant information. If additional documents or evidence are provided by any party, the commission may, if requested, allow a continuance or leave the record open to allow the parties a reasonable opportunity to respond. Any such continuance or extension shall be subject to the limitations of the 120-day rule unless the continuance or extension is requested or agreed to by the applicant. Conflicts of interest. Does any member of the Planning Commission wish to abstain from this hearing? Please raise your hand or state so otherwise. All right. Does any member of the Planning Commission wish to declare an actual or potential conflict of interest? Please raise your hand. Commissioner Ernst?
Hi, sorry, getting the notes up. In my position for an admin for an online community with 10,000 neighbors, I frequently read and am tagged in social media posts and comments related to the city of Milwaukee. Some communication may relate to issues being addressed at the Planning Commission. I do not knowingly interact or engage with current issues being addressed at the Planning Commission. Out of approximately 60,000 comments and posts and reactions per month, I do not specifically recall any communication related to the subject matter of tonight's hearing, but make this general declaration for the record.
Does any member of the Planning Commission wish to report an ex parte contact? Seeing no hands raised. Will any commissioner who has visited the site prior to this hearing please raise your hand? Oops. Sorry about that. I had a glitch. Everybody's got their hand raised. Thank you, everybody, for checking it out before this evening. Here we go. And did any of those commissioners who visited the site speak to anyone at the site or know anything different from what is indicated in the staff report? If you did, please raise your hand. Okay. And does any member of the audience wish to challenge the participation of any member of the Planning Commission? Just give a moment. Again, *9 or raise your hand function in Zoom. And Vera, please let me know if you see or notice anything.
I see no hands raised.
All right, jurisdictional issues. Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission to hear this matter? I'll just give you a few seconds. Use the raise your hand function in Zoom. And Vera, assuming we're seeing nothing.
No hands raised, no.
All right, then let's proceed to the staff report for this evening.
Okay.
We are seeing your screen, Vera.
Oh, terrific. Thank you. All right. Good evening, everyone. Vera Culley, Senior Planner. I'm joined by Jennifer Backus, one of our our engineering tech 3s is here as well to respond to any of the engineering questions as part of this application. Okay. The property is here on this map outlined in red, 9285 Southeast 58th Drive. It's a small vacant lot located at the corner of Johnson Creek Boulevard and 58th Drive and is zoned manufacturing. It is approximately 0.08 acres, so it's 3,592 square feet. It's vacant, was formerly used for storage of materials for the adjacent Smith Rock business. The surrounding area consists of small industrial manufacturing uses. Wichita Feed and Hardware Store is across 58th Drive from the site. There is a residence next door to the property at 9203, and across Johnson Creek Boulevard is the Springwater Corridor. Okay. Again, the zoning for this property is M, manufacturing. It is surrounded by the M zone on all 4 sides. The R7 zone is across Johnson Creek Boulevard from the site. It's approximately 67 or 70 feet from the site. The R7 zone, as I said, across Johnson Creek Boulevard. Okay. The proposed development is a 2-story, 1,848 square foot manufacturing building. There is an accessory office use that's located in that second floor, sort of that cantilevered mezzanine area over the parking space. The proposal includes on-site landscaping, including some kind of plantings or similar on the wall that would be facing Johnson Creek Boulevard. There's on-site parking proposed and full street improvements on 58th Drive. 3 variances are being requested as part of this application. A variance to reduce the minimum front yard setback to 0 feet on Johnson Creek Boulevard. That is because or due to the 20-foot dedication that is required on Johnson Creek Boulevard. There is a variance to reduce the width of the parking area perimeter landscaping to 3.5 feet. And there is a variance related to the location of their accessway or their driveway to the site. That would reduce the spacing between the driveway apron and the property that's just to the north of the site to 4 feet. And as part of the intersection spacing standard of 72 feet from Johnson Creek Boulevard. Those variances are all subject to a type 3 review. A parking modification has been requested, and it's a little unusual, but due to the way the parking code is set up, 1 parking space is required for this use based on the mathematical calculation of the use. But that would also mean that an accessible or an ADA space would be required. So what they're asking for is to have that accessible space be the parking space located on the site, and have the 2 on-street parking spaces that will be created as part of their frontage improvements be adequate for the non-accessible parking spaces that would be required for the project. As part of the application package, an access study was submitted, confirming that the proposed location with some limited tree trimming for site distance would be safe. This is a site plan for the proposal. And so you can see 58th Drive sort of at the top of the snapshot, and you can see the location of the proposed building, the parking space, the landscaping, as well as the addition, the new sidewalk and planting area that would be built along 58th Drive. You also see the width or the areas where the perimeter landscaping around the parking space is proposed as well. Again, the public improvements required as part of this proposal is the 20-foot dedication along Johnson Creek Boulevard. So that, again, moves their property line 20 feet onto the site. And then the full frontage improvements on 58th Drive. That includes on-street parking, sidewalk, and planter strip. Now, within the staff report and the packet that was put together for the hearing, staff identified a key issue. Would approval of the variances result in any negative impacts, and are the proposed variances and the parking modification reasonable and appropriate for the site? Staff has not identified any negative impacts or impacts that are not mitigated as part of the application. The parcel is less than 4,000 square feet, and the required 20-foot dedication on Johnson Creek Boulevard results in a lot size of about 2,600 square feet. Shape of the lot is effectively a triangle, which creates an additional development constraint for the project. The required 10-foot setback on 58th Drive, which they are meeting as part of the proposal. On-site parking, landscaping, the developable area of the site is reduced by approximately 50% when you account for all of those requirements. The alternative to the variance would effectively be to not develop the site, given the multitude of constraints. The access driveway is located as far north as possible or as far away from the Johnson Creek Boulevard intersection as possible, while still maintaining nearly 4 feet from the adjacent property line. And again, Jennifer Backus from the engineering department is here that can answer questions about that as a safety standard, about trying to figure out the best location for that access way and keep it as far away from Johnson Creek Boulevard and from that intersection as possible. The landscape perimeter, planting perimeter is proposed to be 3.5 feet wide. It's certainly, of course, less than the 6-foot minimum. It still does provide a buffer to the adjacent properties while allowing for some meaningful development, again, on a very constrained site. The location of the lot and the proposed building would not be directly adjacent to the existing residence to the north, because it is set back further than this building would be proposed to be. The home itself is approximately about 25 feet from the property line to the closest point to the subject property. Again, on the parking, the use requires 1 parking space, and that is proposed to be the accessible space. And so the request for is to have the required parking space be those proposed on the street as part of their full frontage improvements. The wall facing Johnson Creek Boulevard, that's the one that is proposed at a 0-foot setback. It is proposed to be improved. Some kind of a trellis, living wall, windows, something similar like that to be able to help improve what that wall would look like when it is at some point in the future adjacent to a sidewalk when those full improvements are done on Johnson Creek Boulevard. Nothing. The improvements are proposed to lessen the impact again of that wall on the future sidewalk. This is a list of the approval criteria for the project. We've seen these before and the applicant elected to use the discretionary relief criteria. Staff included findings with the staff report supporting the requested variances, as well as the parking modification. But you can see that the approval criteria look at, is there an alternatives analysis? Has the planning commission determined that the variances are reasonable and appropriate, that they avoid or minimize impacts, that there are desirable public benefits, and that the variances respond to the existing built environment in a creative and sensitive manner, and that any impacts that are identified are mitigated to the extent practicable. So that is your charge this evening as part of this hearing and discussion. We have received comments, those were included in your packet from TriMet, and then folks that are either abutters or in the neighborhood, they have voiced their opposition to the project. And then there was also a formal letter from Michael Connors, an attorney representing Smith Rock, again, in opposition to the project. However, staff's recommendation is to approve the variances and adopt the findings and the conditions of approval that were included in your application. We believe that the variances are reasonable and appropriate, and that the applicant has sufficiently addressed the approval criteria in a way that allows for a very constrained site to be developed in our manufacturing zone. You have some decision-making options tonight. You can approve the application with those recommended findings. You can approve the application with modified findings and modifications to the conditions of approval. We would need to read those into the record. You could deny the application with new findings of denial, or you could continue the hearing. This is an error on the slide. The 120-day deadline was April 6, 2022, but the applicant has provided an extension based on the postponement from the last hearing. So that's a typo on that slide. My apologies. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing. And Jennifer and I will do the best we can to answer any questions that you may have. The applicant and their team are here as for their presentation, and they can answer hopefully any additional questions that I cannot.
Coming off mute there, sorry. Thank you, Vera. Are there any clarifying questions that the commission may have for staff? I am seeing no hands raised. Oh, Commissioner Massey?
Thank you, Chair. Vera, during the informal conferences with the applicant, was there a recommendation made for the applicant to meet with the neighborhood association or the neighbors?
We did not have any discussions one after in between here. So they provided some additional information that was some supplemental information that was provided as part of this packet, but no, we did not have those conversations.
Well, yeah, I understand that, but
yeah,
my question is, was that a recommendation to the applicant at any point during your conversations?
It was not, no.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Sherman?
Thanks, Chair. Vera, I'm curious if there's any background on how this parcel became so small and oddly shaped to begin with.
I don't have that information, but I think as part of the applicant team, I believe the property owner is on the Zoom as well. So that might be something that they can share with you.
Great. Additional follow-up questions, if I may. I noticed kind of in the package talking about frontage improvements being required on 58th. Do those frontage improvements include a curb and stormwater improvements?
I'll let Jennifer answer that. I believe they do, but Jennifer, if you could answer that, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah, so
Jennifer, let's just, if we could, can we wait until the actual testimony piece for our Commissioner Sherman, if that's all right with you, I'd like to have them respond to that during their piece.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chair Lisfeld, Jennifer works for the city. She's on our engineering team. Is that not?
Oh,
yeah.
Jennifer, I'm sorry. It's just a new face. I apologize and didn't recognize you as the city of Milwaukee. Apologize.
Usually Steve's the one here talking. So
yes, sorry.
So curb is required as part of this. We have setback sidewalks. There's that landscape strip there. So the landscape strip there with any kind of plantings, that's going to kind of work as your stormwater quality. We're not doing any storm line extensions or anything like that. No major water quality swales or anything like that, but there is at least going to be some vegetation there to help treat.
Okay. And then a few additional questions, if I may, Chair. Thank you. I'm curious, Vera, if you can kind of share what kind of uses are allowed in kind of manufacturing zone, as well as what kind of uses might also be allowed with this kind of accessory use of an office. Can you give us an example of the types of businesses that could potentially be here, since it seems to be a murky subject?
Sure. And before I get to that, if I could, I actually can answer your previous question about how this lot came to be. Joseph was able to pull up the Mullen Heights subdivision from, I can't see the date. 1926.
Or 23.
Or sorry, 1923. And this lot was platted in 1923, as you see it today, in fact. So it's always been that shape and that size, I guess. Anyway, so for the manufacturing zone, I'm looking at our code right here, sort of what are the permitted uses. So it's intended to be, an industrial use with related accessory uses, such as commercial and office uses, but it's intended to be primarily a manufacturing or an industrial zone. And the kinds of uses that are allowed are collection or warehousing of goods, or warehousing, shipping, general manufacturing and production, processing kinds of uses. Again, commercial and office uses that are accessory to an industrial use are allowed, such as an office where we also do allow for a deli or a small restaurant, but again, accessory to an industrial use. It does talk about that these uses, may produce small amounts of noise and dust and that sort of thing. We have some specialized auto repair uses, businesses already in that zone. Precision cast parts, frankly, is in the manufacturing zone. We have some other industrial manufacturers there that have been there a long time as examples of existing businesses as well. We also allow contractors, base of operations there, and repair and service. And that's a really big category, from everything from electronic equipment and machinery to welding shops to heavy truck repair, and sort of all of those things in between. So it's basically, it's a pretty basic manufacturing zone and sort of those associated uses. And that's kind of where it wants to be. But some adjacent or accessory uses are allowed as accessory to an industrial use too.
So kind of following up on the accessory to an industrial use, you had mentioned kind of an example of a deli. So is some level of kind of, I'll simplify, maybe call it retail, also kind of allowed?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the code. It talks about a gym, secretarial services, a deli, a small restaurant, and or in a retail / wholesale commercial use in a showroom. And that's sort of in the list of the accessory uses, item C. Yeah.
So if again, we're uncertain of kind of the occupancy of this, but if this was a cannabis manufacturing or processing facility, would they also be allowed to have a retail dispensary out of this site?
So the marijuana retailers are allowed as a commercial use and would be subject to some of the specific development standards in the code. I'm just reading straight from the code. That's not me making it up. That they would be allowed in the zone. Yes.
Do we have? I guess, and it sounds like maybe there's some uncertainty on the occupancy. Might also have some uncertainty on the transportation impacts. Can you share more information on, the what we may or may not kind of understand there? I apologize if that question isn't clear.
Yeah, I'm not sure about what you mean by the transportation impacts, I guess.
I guess maybe the question is, it sounds like we're through the parking modification allowing what would be on-site parking requirements being kind of shifted into the right of way. But yeah, I apologize. Maybe I don't have a fully formed question there. And one last kind of follow-up question, there was a lot of talk kind of in the materials as well as in some of the testimony that we've received kind of about some of the site distance issues and concerns about kind of transportation safety and people being able to see kind of clearly at the intersection. I was curious if you could just kind of maybe talk a little bit more about that, and maybe that would be something for Jennifer to help us kind of better understand. And also kind of curious, I guess it talked about how the building would be essentially situated kind of at the property line or where Smith Rock's fence currently is located. And I was curious if any of those kind of site analyses that were done also took into account a lot of the rock that is stacked, already 8 or 10 feet tall, kind of essentially kind of along the fence there.
If I could just touch on one thing, the parking, and just to clarify that the parking calculation that was done as far as what is required was based on a manufacturing use. So if there is a different use that is proposed for that site that would increase the required amount of on-site parking, then we're in a different conversation altogether. So I appreciate the question about would a marijuana retailer be permitted in the zone, yes, but the calculation in the site plan is based on a manufacturing use because of that parking calculation. So I just wanted to clarify that, because the parking calcs are different depending on the use, because it's based on square footage of use. But to your question about the site distance, and I would just point out that there was an access study was provided as part of the original application materials. Supplemental information was provided by the applicant today, which was a follow-up from their traffic engineer that talked about site distance questions as well. But then I will also let Jennifer speak to the site distance at the intersection at 58th Drive with the building. Request to be at a 0-foot setback to the new property line, which is that 20-foot, that 20-foot offset, we'll call it, from the dedication. Jennifer, can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, so for the, because of that 20-foot setback, you actually have quite a lot of space there for that clear vision. So even if the rocks are piled pretty high on that other property too, you're still going to be able to see around it. Even with that building there, you're still going to be able to see around there. The applicant I know provided a nice site triangle. I looked at it from one of the other angles for if vehicles were coming down 58th, and we still have pretty good vision even from the stop bar, but there's also plenty of space for cars to inch forward to see a little better around if needed. But there's quite a bit of flat space through there, so I'm, in conjunction with the access study, I'm not terribly worried about any site distance issues there.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Let's see. Now is an opportunity for testimony. We have we received any correspondence on this matter other than those items that were included in the packet?
Yes, Chair Losfeld. We received a letter from Michael Connors, the attorney representing Smith Rock, this morning. I forwarded that to all of you, as well as to the applicant team. And then later this afternoon, we received some materials from the applicant that included an email correspondence with one of the civil engineers at the county regarding the Johnson Creek Boulevard improvements, and then a follow-up memo from their traffic engineer responding to some of the site distance and safety and access spacing safety questions that Attorney Connors raised in his earlier letter that was submitted for the first hearing in January. But those are the three items that we've received since the packet was issued.
Okay. Applicant testimony. Would the applicant or their representative like to comment? And if so, the applicant could start first by stating their name and city of residence for the record. If staff could bring them in.
Yep. I am promoting Troy and Janae, and you will let me know if there are other folks that I need to be promoting to panelists, please. Okay, Troy and Janae, you've both been promoted to panelists.
Sarah, can you please promote Bob Price?
I don't see anyone with that name on our on the list of attendees. Bob, you said?
It's the owner, maybe?
I'm not sure if maybe there's one person in the attendees list called owner. I'm not sure if that's Bob. If that is Bob, maybe you could raise your hand to confirm that. But I'm sorry, there isn't anyone named Bob on the attendees list, Janae.
All right. Well, maybe he will pipe in. Until then, I guess I can try and take the lead.
Okay.
Let's see. So his plan was...
Wait, I'm sorry, Janae, could I stop you? Could you please introduce yourself for the record? Your name and address and the company that you work for, please? Thank you.
So sorry. My name is Janae Fitzpatrick. I'm with Fitz Design Group. I was hired by Troy Liver to help with this land use proposal, the site plans, the narrative and such. And at that rate, also, I then sub-hired Bob Price, a professional land use planner, to come in. So there's a team of 3 of us on this.
Janae, can you also state your city of residence for the record?
Happy Valley, Oregon.
Great. Okay.
So I was not prepared to do this. Let's see, how can I wing this through? Let me pull up your, I'm sorry, forgive me here. Let me pull up your plans. Would you like to, can I share my screen so that I'm not just going over the previous material you've already submitted?
You should be able to share your screen since I promoted you. So yes, you should be able to do that.
I apologize for this. I was not prepared. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
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 All right. Excellent. So let's see. So let me pull up the project description for the building plans. Let me start first with the building plans. I'm not sure exactly what kind of questions that we're going to have, but
Janae, if you wouldn't mind just expanding that screen so the commissioners can see it full screen.
I still need to be able to see my. Bob is saying he's here and watching, but not tuned in for some reason.
He's probably the owner.
Janae, are you saying that Bob is here as part of the meeting, or?
Yes, he's on.
Okay. So there are names associated with everyone in the attendees list except for one, and it's titled owner. I'm not sure if that's Bob.
That's probably Carol.
Okay.
I've asked Bob to call you. Let me continue, and if he catches on and can take over, that's great. If not, I don't want to waste the commissioner's time.
Okay.
So, as I said, I was brought in to assist with the land use. I took the preliminary building layout or building design and made a 3D model of it, put in some civil design aspects on the site with the survey, and came up with the following line work plans, I guess we could call it. So we have the upper office floor plan at 418, the main floor at 1430. There's not really a lot of room for much to happen, but this is what we have left for the sites. This is what the owner is desiring to go for, like has been discussed. We don't have a specific renter at this point, but obviously when we get to that point, they will have to adhere to any standards that exist within that manufacturing land use district. So that is the floor plan. The elevations, it's a oddly shaped building, but it's one of those, there's a term for it. Basically the ribbed metal structure.
Pre-engineered metal building.
Thank you. So we have this oddly shaped structure and a attempt at putting in a trellis along Johnson Creek Boulevard, just to show that we do intend to do some sort of screening. That's what was agreed on or discussed in length at the pre-application meeting. So that's what we are running with. Let me jump over to, so that was the submittal in June. Since then, there was just a little bit of things cleaned up, but the elevation that you were shown on the staff report is the same thing. It's just a little bit cleaner. Let me jump over to the site plan. So the site plan that we submitted in from November's update shows just what Vera was talking about. We've got the saw cut to the existing 58th Drive, putting in some curb. This is, can you see my cursor running around?
Yes.
So we have just the basic driveway apron, sidewalk coming down. We've only showed half of the curb return because we know that this was not intended to be developed. let me continue on to that part later. So we knew that the curb ramp needed to show that it would work coming across 58th Drive. Because, and as Vera commented on, because we were triggered to have ADA parking, we found it more suitable, more safe to, we'd rather have the ADA parking on site than having them along the street than being forced to come all the way out to the crosswalk and in. So seeing it's just one stall we were required with anyway, we wanted to put that on the street so that there was this safety. Also, it allows for, if there is delivery at all, it can be, you know, UPS and those guys can come straight up through here into the roll-up door. So it just seemed a better use of our small site. This, of course, will be flush, this curb, so that ADA can still get in through the typical door. We've run through all of the lot coverage calculations to show how we meet the requirements. And this is just a little bit shifted view of how the public improvements would align with what would happen based on the current TSP plan for both Milwaukie on 58th and then Clackamas County on Johnson Creek. And let me zoom in here. I'm not sure that this was really addressed or acknowledged in Mr. Connor's letter, but we've always had some sort of design based on what the TSP planned for at Clackamas County. So at this point, we were going with their 12-foot travel lanes, and it showed us to have it's very hard to see here, but there's a 1 foot difference between the back of sidewalk and the face of building. The only difference, let me go back to fit page. The only difference in this one is it just zooms out and overlays it with an aerial view in case it helps you get a feel for where things are on site. So let me quickly jump forward to a submittal that I gave Vera. I think it's this one. Yeah. So after Mr. Connor's comments, I did go in and notice that because of what he said, that there was Johnson Creek Boulevard. There's a continual phasing of the project. So I reached out to the city engineer or the county project manager for that project, and we had some email coordination back and forth, which I submitted today to Vera and was forwarded to you folks there, that talked about what we showed was fine. It was just that there would be a 5-inch or a 6-inch curb added to the design we had, and that because of constraints, they might actually change. Let me go to this view. It shows the dimensions. They might actually change the 12-foot lanes to be 11-foot lanes. So what this did is take our 12-inch clearance from property line to back of sidewalk to be 5 inches. And this is probably going to come up because I know that you guys are keen in what you're seeing. This little honeycomb hatch here is my attempt at showing where the trellis may end up. I'm not sure whether it's going to be a trellis or windows or, stepped different shading in the colors of the actual siding. But if we're running forward with the trellis idea, the trellis itself is obviously going to grow down the side of the building. So it could be, I think, I went out to Fred Meyer's, for example, their system was, I think, 3 inches out. This is probably about that. But so it could overhang from the right of way. Could. It may be this far. And it's something that I was planning on working through with the county when we get to the actual building permit to try to figure out what would work best, because what we don't want is to build something that has to be removed for the city to, or the county to do their improvements, but also we don't want to build a trellis that's going to be climbed at midnight and we're going to have somebody on our roof, or that's going to and danger to somebody walking by or riding by, crashing into the building. But there is 6 inches in the worst case of what the county shows so far, that there's room to put something there. If it means that we have the trellis come down on, let me go back to this proposed building. If it means that we show the trellis and we have it, stop 6 foot high, and that's what works best and is agreed on by everyone, then that's definitely something that we are game for. It's just everything right now is pretty much up in the air to wait and find out whether this would be approved, this building and this land use in general, and what type of trellis or basic screening we can do to soften the edge of this, 23-foot wall. So best foot forward, that's what we'd like. I know I'm probably taking up too much time here. Let me jump over to this. So this is my attempt at gathering some of our screened wall options, just going out there and grabbing some ideas. Some obviously are shown in maybe residential applications, but you'll get the idea. This is just screened wall. My image shows something like this, which this looks like it may be string. Obviously it wouldn't be for us. Here's some basic like fencing type material that is connected. Here's others. I mean, the idea is to get something that is screening. This is exactly what is put up at Fred Meyer's and what I measured to be 3 inches out. Again, this is really just a lot of fencing that would be connected to the building. It would be great if we could do something artsy, but I'm not committing the owner to that, nor how it would connect. Here's an option growing up. Here's an option growing down from the roof. And here is just another option of screening growing that's trellis. So if we were to go for some kind of a living wall, this is what we would like to go with. But we'd like to retain the option to have other alternatives if in the next phase, the next building plan, permit plan, and street frontage plans, if that's what works out for all involved best.
Janae, I don't want to interrupt you, but Bob Price has joined the meeting and I have promoted him, so he is available to speak as well.
Excellent. Bob, do you want to take over? Go right ahead.
Janae, do you want to stop sharing your screen, or will Bob be speaking to the plans?
I'm not sure he has. I don't know that yeah, I'll stop sharing. If he wants me to jump in and share some of these slides, I can definitely do that.
Bob, you've been promoted, but you are still on mute. I don't know if you're preparing to speak now. There you go.
Mute. Start video.
Bob, you've been promoted, but you are still on mute. I don't know if you're preparing to speak now. There you go.
Am I there? Start video.
Bob, you've been promoted, but you are still on mute. I don't know if you'll be preparing to speak now.
Am I there? Start video.
So it may be a question of whether or not your mic is on versus your phone audio, but you may need to mute yourself. It may be a question of whether or not your mic is on versus your phone audio, but you may need to mute yourself. It may be a question of whether or not your mic is on versus your Vera, could you please mute Bob? Janae, I'm curious if you're still there. Janae, I'm curious if you're still there.
Hey, Bob, if you're going to join us, you need to hang up the phone because we were getting a feedback loop on you.
I'm curious if you're still
Okay,
there.
hung up.
Okay. Hey, Bob, if you're going to join us, you need to hang up the phone because we were getting a feedback loop on you.
I didn't have the phone on.
Okay.
I
join us, you need to hang up the phone because we were getting a feedback loop on you.
I didn't have the phone on.
It's still happening for me. Just
I rest my case.
It's still happening for me.
Vera, and could you please just mute Bob for a moment?
Bob, you will turn down your computer all the way. Turn down the volume so there's no volume. I think that's the only way you're going to be able to speak. It still might not work, but sorry, Chair.
Nope. Bob, once you've turned your volume off, if you could just give us a thumbs up, we'll unmute you and you can try this again. Vera, why don't you unmute him one last time? And Bob, if you're there, if you just say your name and city of residence. And Vera, if you could unmute him, please.
So I'm asking to there.
Just say your name and city of residence.
Bob Price, Portland,
And Vera,
Oregon.
if you could unmute him, please.
So I'm asking to there.
Just say your name and city of residence.
Bob Price,
And
Portland,
Vera,
Oregon.
if you could unmute him, please.
So I'm asking.
Vera, let's mute Bob. City of residence. Janae, just a question to you. Is if you are communicating back to Bob, just curious if we feel like further testimony is needed. Otherwise, I'm wondering how we're going to get Bob's audio issue resolved.
It might make sense for him to directly call in on the call-in line while I continue to try and take you through our presentation. Should we try that, Bob? And Commissioner, whatever your wish is.
And Janae, if you feel like further presentation is necessary, then yes, let's continue. But it sounded as though you were
wrapping up. Yeah,
exactly. And so I'm just curious if the team feels like further presentation is necessary. Otherwise, I could move on to whether or not the commission has questions for you.
Yeah, why don't we do that? We'll mute me and let me give him a call and see if I can help him figure it out, if you don't mind.
Sure. So commissioners, this is an opportunity to ask direct questions of the applicant for clarification. So giving Janae just a moment here. Is there anyone on the commission who has a direct question to the applicant? If so, could you just use raise the hand function and we'll get through this? Yes.
Am I unmuted?
Is there anyone on the commission who has a direct question to the applicant? If so, could you just use raise the hand function and we'll get through this? Yes.
Am I unmuted?
Is there anyone on the commission who has a direct question? Vera, please mute Bob. Commissioner Sherman?
Thanks, Chair. And as I said in the chat, I'm wondering if Bob might also be watching on YouTube because of the reverb issues that are occurring. So Bob, if you're watching on YouTube, you might want to close YouTube and just be on Zoom. The question for the applicant is kind of regarding some of the trellising and screening that we were just shown in the presentation. Some of the features like a living wall and some of the plants that were climbing up these trellises. I'm curious how that is might be realized in a situation where there's proposed a 0-foot setback from the adjacent sidewalk. Where will these plants grow from? Wondering if you could shed any insight on that.
Janae, if you're available, now would be the opportunity to respond.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. The plan thus to date for the living wall, the trellis, would be some sort of building mounted planters, or if the county allowed for such, a few plants along the base of the building in that 6 inches outside of the building.
Commissioner Kashrabadi, your hand is raised.
Thank you, Chair. Question also regarding the trellis. It's if, because you said you showed us what you guys would like to do, but that would depend on the building plans and if there was any issues as the process went along. So what would, if that wasn't the one if you can't do the one you wanted, which one would you go with? I mean, I guess my question is, I want to make sure that the trellis will be there. I don't want developmental plans to say, oh, well, because of developmental plans, we got rid of the idea of putting, you know, some sort of trellis there for vegetation to grow.
Right, completely understood. So the idea is that trellis is the optimum, the desired screening, you know, as per the pre-app plan. We would like to find a way to get that to work. If for some reason it wouldn't work, we would like to have some options not presented to us, but available to us. So whether it was originally we had talked about, Vera was suggesting lower windows, but there's a safety hazard of having the lower windows. We could have lower windows, but we'd have bars all over them, which isn't appealing either. So we would like to do something where it would be a mixture of either the trellis or maybe slightly lower windows, but not at street level. Some different colors, just like how you see the large Amazon buildings where they have the same structure, but you've got different shading of the building, or maybe it's offset in 6 inches. So we would like to be able to come to some sort of agreement with a quote unquote screening that's accepted by the city. We don't want to just come in and say, yeah, we're going to do trellis. Oh, we can't do trellis. Sorry, we're not going to do anything. I understand where you're coming from.
Thank you. And the second question, just from reading some of the public comments and concerns in opposition, there were some comments made about a lack of communication with the neighbors and with people in the neighborhood. And I just wanted to give the owner an opportunity to respond to that. I mean, has there been much communication with this, especially the house neighboring right next door, where that property line variance is going to put you guys right up against that house?
Well, I know you mentioned the owner, but they're not promoted. So I can speak for the team as far as Troy, Bob, and I. We have had no connection, no discussion with any of the neighborhood. No.
Thank you.
Through the chair, I'm happy to promote the property owners, to the discussion, to be able to make comments to those questions if you'd like.
Commissioner Kashrabadi, do you feel like you need further conversation with the owners?
Yeah, I mean, if we can, I would love for them to respond to that.
Okay, let's try one more time to unmute Bob.
I have promoted the owner, who I think is Carol, maybe, but Bob, it looks like you're unmuted as well, so let's go from there.
Commissioner Kashrabadi, could you just ask your question one more time?
Yes, there were some public comments that we received in regards to there being a lack of communication with the neighborhood, with people in the neighborhood, including the neighboring property, which one of your variances that you're requesting puts you right up against that property line of that home. So I'm curious to know, has there been any communication with anyone in the neighborhood or the adjacent property owner?
Okay,
so the owner is currently on mute. If they want to come off mute, and while we're taking a moment to do that, I just want to underline the fact that communication with the neighborhood groups, although it's preferred, is not a requirement of this process. So we now have the owner, someone named Keith Phelps, who's
that's the owner.
Okay.
It's Keith and Carol Phelps, and this is Carol Phelps.
Okay. If you heard the question, could you respond? But first, I want to just ask you, state your city of residence.
Milwaukie, Oregon.
Okay, go ahead.
No, we have not had any communications. We're not familiar with this process, and that's why I hired this team of people to do this for us. So that's, that's basically it. We did talk to Lou Smith before we were deciding on a plan to build this, and he had rented the property from us before for several years to park his rocks there. And we said, well, we think we want to develop it. Do you want us to build to suit a building for you? Are you interested in that at all? And he said, no, I don't need the space. So that was that. And he stopped renting from us. And then this is where we are. We proceeded to hire Troy and his group, and they're our advisors. We didn't get involved in any of this. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Kostrobody, I think that suffices as a response. So if you agree, I'm going to move on. Are there any other commissioners with questions? I'm seeing no other hands raised by commissioners. Bob, your hand is raised and you may want to lower it. I am going to go forward then with audience testimony. Do we have anyone who wishes to testify on the application? If so, would you please first state your name and city of residence for the record?
Chair Losfeld, I see Anthony Allen has their hand raised. I'm going to allow them to speak. All right.
Hello? You hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear. I just state your name, first and last, and city of residence.
Yes, it's Anthony Allen and Milwaukie.
Excellent.
So I guess I have two concerns here. The disguise of the building, the screening, while that is a creative idea and is utilized in certain situations, I don't believe 6 inches is realistic to think that you can have planters grow with permanent greenery in a 6-inch container. That's just not realistic at all. So unless there is some type of some proposal that's made on how what home and the capacity of that container for the plants to grow in, unless there's some type of plan given, I'm just not sure how that's to be realistically expected that 6 inches will be enough. And then I very much have a concern of asking that there's a variance given for less plant material that's not just for screening purposes. The city is currently proposing that homeowners abide by changes in the tree code. While I don't agree with all of those proposals, I agree with most of them, and some of them have to do with climate change, of course, but the other aspects of just climate change that plants help us with, including cleaning our air. That's not climate change related, but just as filters, but also particularly for waterways, and that area is right next to Kellogg Creek. So I feel that if the city is not going to hold our industries to at least some semblance of what we're asking individual homeowners to do, I just feel that that's a lack of consistency that the city seems to be continually wanting to allow. Therefore, I feel when you are coming to asking individuals to abide by a rule for all of our concern, if it's not applied to businesses and industries, I just find a lack of sincerity. So those were my two issues that I have so far with those variances. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anthony. I appreciate that. I understand the concern, but I'm not seeing that the two items raised are directed towards the substantiative criteria on which we, the Planning Commission, would then have to respond to.
Chair, I want to interrupt here because it is looking for a reduction in perimeter landscaping, and I think that is the point that Mr. Allen is raising. So yes, it is towards the applicable criteria.
Let's see, Vera, there's a shift here in the script a bit, but I just want to first, before we direct any opportunity for staff to respond, is there any additional testimony? Are there any other members of the audience looking to testify?
Yes, there is Mike Connors has raised his hand. Mike, I'm going to allow you to talk. Go ahead.
Mike, if you could state first and last and city of residence.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Mike Connors. I'm a land use attorney at Hathaway Larson LLP located in Portland, Oregon. Since I can't see myself on the screen, I just want to make sure everybody can hear me.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. As you know from our comment letters, I represent Smith Rock, who's the owner and operator of the adjacent business to the west. Several parties submitted written comments at the January 25th hearing raising concerns about the proposal. And when the applicant requested a 77-day continuance, we assumed the applicant would use that time to contact neighbors and at least attempt to address some of the concerns. Needless to say, we were surprised and disappointed by the applicant's contentious and inadequate responses to these comments. As we explained in our April 12th letter, which was submitted earlier today, the applicant failed to address several key issues, criteria, and our remaining deficiencies with the application. And I want to summarize those deficiencies in my testimony to make sure the Planning Commission is focused on it. I'll start first with the variance. And it's one very important thing for the Commission to understand, and that is that the applicant doesn't need these variances in order to develop this property in an economically feasible manner. It is a small property, but under the variance criteria, there are two options. You can either go economic hardship or you can go discretionary relief criteria. And the applicant chose discretionary relief criteria. And their recent submittals, I believe, acknowledged that they didn't file for economic hardship because they couldn't justify or make that case. And so these are their development preferences. They are not requirements that they need in order to be able to develop this property. And it's our position that they failed to justify these preferences because they failed to adequately satisfy several variance criteria. First, the applicant failed to demonstrate that the proposed variances will have a desirable public benefit. That's one of the criteria. The applicant relies exclusively on the purported benefit of developing a vacant site and producing jobs, taxes, etc. But again, as I just stated, the property can be developed without these variances. The applicant needs to identify a desirable public benefit to support these specific variances, not the mere development of the property, and they failed to do so despite two opportunities to do it. Second, the applicant failed to provide an alternative analysis of the impacts and benefits of the variance proposal as compared to the baseline code requirements. Again, we know that this property can be developed under the baseline code requirements, and they were required per your code to provide a comparison of those two options, but they failed to do so. All their application does is talk about the challenges of developing this property, but they failed to show you what this would look like under the baseline requirements, and therefore they failed to satisfy that criteria. Third, the applicant failed to demonstrate the proposed variances will avoid or minimize impacts to surrounding properties. Again, another criteria for the variance. Several neighbors have raised legitimate concerns about the impact of the development proposed variances. The applicant dismissed these concerns as speculative and unfounded. As we detailed in our April 12th letter, these concerns are not speculative or unfounded. And I'm going to briefly just explain some of the concerns and how the applicant failed to address them. Smith Rock raised a legitimate safety concern about the impact of a 0 front yard setback on the visibility of its truck access, which is about 100 feet from the subject property. Despite raising this in our January 25th letter, the applicant waited until this afternoon, about 2 o'clock, to submit a memo from their traffic engineer purportedly addressing this issue. This memo is dated January 25th. The applicant's been sitting on this. And I don't know about all of you, but when somebody's got information that is purportedly going to be helpful for their case, and they've had it for months and they wait until the last minute to submit it, my radar goes up. And there's no way we've had legitimate opportunity or sufficient time to review the technical memo, and we may choose to consult with our own traffic engineer. And because of the applicant's failure to wait until the last minute to submit this, we're asking that this hearing be continued so we have more time to be able to analyze and potentially respond to that memo. Second issue of concerns that was raised by the family who lives in the adjacent property to the north, who raised concerns about potential damage to the large blue spruce tree roots near the property line, the lack of sufficient landscaping buffer to mitigate the impacts from the adjacent manufacturing use, and impacts on their ability to continue using their backyard. The applicant in response showed utter disdain for these concerns and failed to provide any meaningful responses or solutions. Unless and until the applicant takes the neighbors' concerns about these impacts seriously, it failed to address this criteria and failed to show that the impacts are being mitigated to the extent practicable. It's important for you to understand that the applicant is requesting the maximum number of variances allowed in this case. All 3 of the variances are significant. The applicant is not entitled to these variances. He must demonstrate that they are justified under the approval criteria based on substantial evidence in the record.
Mr. Connors, can I ask you to wrap up your comments in the next 2 minutes, please?
Yes, I will. Thank you. So that's the variance. There are some other pieces that the applicant has failed to address. We raised a potential conflict with the Johnson Creek Boulevard Road Improvement Project. And again, the applicant waited until this afternoon to submit email correspondence with the county that they claim shows there's no issue. I urge you to read those email communications closely. The county states in their email that they think there will be a problem with their ability to do their construction given the proposed trellis. And now we hear tonight that the trellis, even though it's something that city staff said was an important part of the project, is up in the air. And it's one of many proposals. And the applicants can be looking to the city to tell them what alternatives they should consider. That's just not sufficient. There's a conflict. It's clear in the record, and therefore they failed to address that issue. The other issues relate to their failure to provide any information about the actual manufacturer. There's 2 criteria that's relevant to. The transition area standards, which apply in this case because we're 120 feet from residential zone and 25 feet from an actual residence, require the commission to consider several characteristics of the proposed use: noise, lighting, hours of operation, deliveries, height of the structure, and then determine if there are
30 seconds
that need to be imposed. You can't do your job if you don't know who the manufacturer and don't have any information on that. And the other one is the required parking determination. They're seeking an exception to the rule. The only way for them to justify that is to talk about the nature of the business, number of employees, number of customers. They haven't provided that information. They can't demonstrate compliance with the required parking determinations.
Thank you, Mr. Connors, for your commentary.
Real quickly, those are the main issues. Hopefully you've had time to read our letter, but I think what's clear is that the applicant hasn't met their burden of proof, and we ask that you deny the application. And I appreciate a little bit of additional time to testify.
Thank you for that detail, Mr. Connors. I appreciate taking your time here tonight. So I'm going to ask for just a brief moment of pause here. Consulting with staff, just one moment. Vera, I'm wondering if we can take just a brief pause here, maybe 3 minutes to consult with staff and city attorney for a moment.
Yes, we can do that. So a 3-minute pause.
If I could get everybody to return at 7:53, that'd be great. I appreciate it.
So we're on, and we are on the air. Thank you.
Perfect. I'm getting some feedback. Hopefully that's okay. Good. Awesome. Thank you, Joseph. All right. So, Vera, I want to check here to see whether or not there is any additional public testimony if folks are in attendance raising their hand or otherwise.
Chair Losfeld, I do see Lou Smith has their hand raised. I'm going to allow them to talk. All right. Okay. Lou, you are muted, but as soon as you unmute, you can start.
Good evening.
Lou, please state your city of residence.
Milwaukie.
Okay, go ahead, sir. And please keep your comments concise and to relevant criteria.
Okay. Well, my real main concern here is the family that lives in the house just north of this proposed project. You know, all these other issues about sites and lines and, you know, live plants on the walls and whatnot. I mean, I don't know how that all would possibly work out, but I know that this really giving this extra room to the north of this is going to seriously compromise the lives of the people that the family that lives there. It's not just a house, it's a home. We also are intending to put solar panels on that roof eventually. We believe that that would probably not be possible once this building goes up there. And although I have no authority to say this, you know, I just think this is too damn big of a building for that lot. And I would just let it go at that. You know, possibly something else could go there, but this is just too big of a structure for this little tiny piece of real estate. A lot of different problems. Seems like everybody's trying to get around them as opposed to just facing up to them. I say, don't do this. And so do my neighbors and the people across the street and anybody that I know. Wichita Hardware is right here with me right now. They feel the very same way about it. We just don't think that this is a good plan as submitted. And we think it needs to be looked into a lot more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Appreciate your time. Vera, any additional attendees looking to provide testimony this evening?
I don't see any other hands raised, no.
Okay, great. So during testimony, Vera, we have maybe a couple of points here that we want to clarify with staff. And I'll ask Vera, could you please clarify the comments relevant to the planters, the size of the planters and the landscape setbacks, and specifically point to the portion of code that is being triggered or if it is being triggered?
Sure. On the perimeter landscaping, that is specific to section 600 of the code. That's in the parking section of the code. So there are requirements for perimeter landscaping around parking areas. So it's supposed to be a minimum of 6 feet wide. They are asking for a width of 3.5 feet. So there's a type 3 variance being requested to reduce the minimum width of that perimeter landscaping. So the approval criteria for that are the same approval criteria for a type 3 variance. The notion of impacts, mitigation of impacts, public benefits, etc. So it's the same approval criteria, but that perimeter landscaping around the parking area is specific to section 600 of the code, and that's where the standard is. The trellis piece of this is a design feature. As I understand it from the applicant, it was something that was talked about as something to mitigate the idea of the building being at a 0-foot setback to the future sidewalk, whenever that happens, for the Johnson Creek Boulevard improvements. So it was, and I think in the follow-up and some supplemental materials, they've talked about, trellis or similar. It could be additional windows, as Janae was talking about in her presentation, additional windows, a different kind of facade, a mural. I mean, it could be any number of things. It's not a requirement. It is something that they had proposed as a design element to soften that wall of the building.
Okay, so not part of the applicable criteria.
No, I think it was intended to be a way of responding to the 0-foot setback variance request that they have submitted. Yeah.
Are there any other clarifications that commissioners are asking of staff? Commissioner Hemer, your hand is raised.
Yeah, I'm a little fuzzy, I guess, maybe on the address and jurisdiction, because we keep talking about Clackamas County and we talk about Milwaukie. So is the building, because the access is off of 58th, is it addressed then in Milwaukie, which then gives us this authority? Or if it was addressed off of Johnson Creek, it would be in Clackamas County? I'm unaware of that relationship, I guess, if that could be explained a little bit.
Sure. If I could, through the chair, Clackamas County is the road authority for Johnson Creek Boulevard. It's all in the city of Milwaukie, but they are the road authority for the street itself.
Commissioner Sherman, your hand is raised.
Yeah.
Question for staff.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is a question for staff. Kind of with regards to the variance request to reduce the kind of the vegetation requirement on the north side of the property and on the kind of northwest side of the property. Would it be reasonable to assume that if the second story office was not also being proposed as part of this development, those vegetation requirements could be met and there would still be ample space for the one ADA accessible parking spot?
I have not reviewed the site plan to sort of eliminate it that way. I think that's, the perimeter measurement is proposed based on the design that they've proposed. I don't know that I can speak to, well, if you made the building smaller, you can make the perimeter landscaping bigger. I haven't examined the site plan that way. It's a fair question, but I'm not sure that I can answer it accurately, but it's certainly worth thinking about. Yes.
All right. I think so. During the testimony portion, we also heard a request for a continuance from Mr. Connors. So with respect to that request, which is being made, we are going to skip over any portion of discussion, which may be a rebuttal, and go directly to a continuance of a date certain. And Vera, I'll ask you to kind of step in, help me out here to share with us some of those dates.
Sure. So in order to account for, I know the commission is familiar with the 777 idea about how additional comments can be submitted. So the date certain for the continued hearing would be May 24th, and then we would back into that with from today. So today is the 12th. So there would be a 1-week deadline. So by 5 p.m. on April 19th would be the deadline for anyone to submit additional testimony or information relative to the application. That includes attendees as well as the applicant, sort of anyone. All of that information will be posted on the land use application webpage. So all of that testimony or all that information would get posted. So then 1 week from then would be April 26th. That's the deadline, 5 p.m., for anyone to submit additional testimony in response to that first set of testimony. So 5 p.m. on the 26th. And then May 3rd is the applicant's final written argument. So only the applicant gets that third 7-day period. So by May 3rd at 5 p.m. is the applicant's final written argument based on all of the testimony and all of the information that had been submitted during the prior 2 weeks, or the 2 7-day periods. Staff will collect all of that stuff. A new staff report will be issued for the public hearing to be continued to May 24th. I hope that all made sense. I'm happy to answer any questions about that.
All right, I think that makes sense. So with that, Vice Chair Edge.
I was going to offer the motion, so if you have anything else you want to say, go ahead.
No, I think, go ahead, offer the motion, please.
Okay. I think we need to close the public close the public testimony portion of the hearing.
Go ahead and do that, Chair. Just close the public testimony portion of the hearing for today. Gavel, and I'll make the motion.
Okay, I'm closing the public testimony portion of the hearing on VR-2021-012 and will entertain a motion for continuance.
I move that we continue hearing VR-2021-012 to a date certain of May 24th.
I'll second.
And leaving the public record open for additional written testimony for 7 days, with an additional 7 days for rebuttal to any new testimony, with an additional 7 days for final applicant rebuttal.
All right, it has been moved and
I'll second.
Seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Aye. Opposed? All right, seeing no hands raised, we are going to then move on. It's been moved and seconded to continue the hearing to May 24th. Thank you, everybody. So with that in mind, we are going to then move on to the next part of our agenda here. Vera, the next part of the agenda I know is, I'm sorry, I'm thinking here that the script is not correct. So Vera, I'm going to lean on you a little bit here. The next part of our agenda, if you would.
Do you want me to read it, Chair? I have the script up.
I've also got it up, and we just go directly to the code amendments. The public hearing on ZA-2022-001 is called to order. The purpose of the hearing is to consider the legislative amendments to several sections of the municipal code related to Oregon Senate Bill 458. Conduct of the hearing. If you are here to testify, please remember to confine your remarks to the application and the relevant criteria and to avoid repetition and not relevant information. The Planning Commission will make recommendations to council regarding whether the proposal conforms with all city applicable criteria. I now ask staff to cite the zoning ordinance section or sections where the criteria can be found.
The approval criteria for code amendments can be found in section 19.902, amendments to maps and ordinances, and chapter 19.1000, review procedures.
Thank you, Vera. Do any members of the Planning Commission wish to declare an actual or potential conflict of interest? All right. Does any member of the Planning Commission wish to abstain? Okay. Vera, let's proceed to the staff report.
Right. Thank you, Chair. Bring up. Okay. All right, thanks, everyone. This is the official public hearing for a work session item that was discussed with you folks about a month ago, I guess, regarding Senate Bill 458. All right. Senate Bill 458 was adopted by the legislature, Oregon legislature in 2021, so this past summer. The bill allows lot divisions for middle housing that enables them to be sold or owned individually. Senate Bill 458 allows for lot divisions of a parent lot solely for ownership opportunities of middle housing units. The point of the bill was in response to concerns that middle housing without the options for fee simple ownership would really only be for rent, or the only other option for an ownership was a condominium plat. So this provides for an alternative to a condominium plat for ownership of middle housing units. It applies to, it's a follow-up, or it goes with House Bill 2001. It applies to middle housing land divisions permitted on or after June 30th, 2022. And again, it allows lot divisions for middle housing. ADUs are not eligible for land division under 458, and they are associated specifically with single detached dwellings in our code. The requirements and so the things that the city is allowed to ask for and what we're not allowed to ask for in this process are very prescriptive in Senate Bill 458. And I just wanted to go over this a little bit. So the requirements that it applies to all middle housing types. So again, duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, townhouses, and cottage clusters. The resultant land division is one dwelling per lot. There must be separate utilities for each dwelling. But a middle housing land division could include easements on the parent lot for things like driveways and parking areas, common areas, pedestrian access, etc. The plat must show compliance with the building code, and it requires an expedited review timeframe. And in our code amendments, we've put that into a type 2 review process with some compressed timeframes. So in the code language that was included in the packet, you'll see some amendments to the type 2 review process that are specific to middle housing land divisions. Some of the optional things that we're allowed to require through the Senate bill are street frontage improvements for the public street portion where the parent lot fronts on a street. We are requiring that. Preliminary and final plat requirements, we are requiring that so that it's consistent with our existing land division regulations, as well as building permits and how that works with the final plat. That we would require that the final plat be recorded prior to issuing building permits for the structures. That's what we do now as well. So we are not proposing to have concurrent review of building permits and the plats. We want to follow our consistent land review process that we have now. These are some of the things that the Senate bill does not allow us to require. So the new lots can be effectively landlocked lots, so we can't require frontage for all of the lots, like our land division requirements now. We cannot require parking or driveway to each of the child lots or the resultant lots. We can require, of course, parking if that's how the code lays out, but all that parking would be found in an easement or in a shared parking area or something like that, but we can't require parking for each individual lot. There are no minimum lot size or dimensions on each of the resultant lots, but there are on the parent lots. And then there are some other review criteria or conditions of approval within the code language that was included. Again, we are only allowed to condition or require things that the Senate bill allows us to, and that list is not very long of the things that we're allowed to require. This is an example of something of an illustrative example of a triplex that would be the subject of a Senate Bill 458 land division. So you can see the parent lot is sort of the fat dotted line around the perimeter. And then you'll see 3 middle housing lots, so that we have 3 lots for each, or a lot for each triplex unit. I just want to make sure that, that folks are clear that this is still a triplex as a property. These are not creating single detached dwelling lots. These are triplex lots. So the parent lot is still subject to lot coverage and all of those standards that apply for triplexes. It's each individual lot that has some extra credit to be able to allow for them to divide so that those can be sold individually. Again, it applies to both detached and attached units, and we have proposed amendments to Title 17 in various sections of our land division code, and in Title 19 specifically for the Type 2 review process. All right, I did want to add, this is some new information. This was not, I know it's a lot of words, I'm sorry. But as I've been tweaking this code and talking to DLCD about different things in some other communities as well, this is language that I have borrowed from both Wilsonville and Tigard, because the planners have been talking about what Senate Bill 458 means and how we're all handling it. And one of the things that we're, I guess I'll just call a little concerned about is how the Senate bill is written and how we're not allowed to require things like minimum setbacks and lot coverage and so on the individual lots, on the child lots. And one thing that raised a question for us was sort of the properties that might be around on the outside or the perimeter of that parent lot. That if we're not allowed to ask for setbacks, then does that mean that a middle housing unit could be effectively 3 feet off of a property line where there's an existing house on the other side of that property line? That there ought to be some understanding of what the existing standards are for a neighborhood, that it's okay for the child lots, but what about the kind of the perimeter, of the properties? And the Senate bill allows us to require those kinds of setbacks on those perimeter, on the parent lot property line. But the code language that I had originally put together didn't make that really clear. And so I was talking to some folks in Tigard and in Wilsonville, and we were all talking about how we're handling it. And this is the language that they're using, that we're making it really clear that there's a difference between the parent lot and the child lots, or those resultant middle housing lots, so that we're not, staff would be interpreting it this way anyway, because the Senate bill allows us, but this way it's very clear and it's in our code that this is what we're doing. And we also wanted to make sure that it was clear in the code that a detached quadplex development is still a quadplex. These are not individual single detached units. So I just wanted to kind of put this on the screen because we've added some additional language to clarify that for folks. And then one of the other things, just to make sure that folks are clear on, is that these individual lots that get created cannot be further divided. So that's how they stay. They can't be divided any further. So I just wanted to talk about that. So happy to answer any questions. Just letting you know the code review schedule. So tonight we have our hearing with you folks. We are scheduled to have a hearing on May 17th with the City Council, so that the effective date would be June 17th of the code. So it's right in line with the House Bill 2001 requirements. So we're right in line with the DLCD deadlines for these various code amendments. Happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you, Vera. Looking to the commission, are there any questions for staff? If so, please raise your hand. Commissioner Hemer?
So I guess my question is this the minimum that is required by the state? Are we going beyond what the state is asking us to do anywhere in that code? And did we address some of this with our middle housing proposal as well?
So this is basically exactly what the Senate bill requires. It's no more, no less. It's the baseline requirement from Senate Bill 458. And as far as it being addressed in our House Bill 2001, it's not. And a lot of communities have done this way. We were also far into our House Bill 2001 middle housing code, and then 458 happened. So we chose to, and a few other communities are doing it this way too. We're sort of finishing up all of our middle housing stuff, and now we're doing the 458 on top of it. They don't conflict because the 458 is so specific to land division for the middle housing. So, so they go together quite well. And we thought about it for a minute to put it into the middle housing stuff, but it was just a lot to layer, and it would have been shifting gears a lot, and they layer okay like they are. So yes, we're here again for another code amendment package, but they'll go together just fine afterwards.
Additional questions? Okay. Seeing no additional questions. Now we're moving on into testimony. Have we received any correspondence on this matter other than the items that are included in the packet today, Vera?
We have not, no.
Vera, do we have anyone who wishes to testify, who may be signifying? So in the audience, for audience members, this is an opportunity to testify on this particular application. Please raise your hand or use *9 if you are on the phone. I'll give you a couple seconds to do that.
Right, Chair Lusfeld, I see Anthony Allen has his hand raised.
All
So
right.
Anthony, I will allow you to talk.
Hi, great. Thank you for taking my my question. Can I assume by the diagram that we were shown for the potential triplex that would adhere to the proposed 40% tree canopy that is currently being that does? Okay, that's all I wanted to know, that this code change amendment does take that into account for any of those developments. I see one person shaking their head, so I'm assuming that's yes from all of you.
Yes, Vera, if you could state so.
Yes. Yeah, the tree code applies to all of these projects, so yes, they would need to find a way to meet the 40%, either as sort of the overall lot or the individual lots, but the parent lot itself would still need to meet the 40% tree canopy. Yes.
All right. Mr. Allen, if that's the end of your testimony, then I'll ask Vera if there's additional testimony or attendees looking to participate.
Chair Lusfeld, I don't see any other hands raised, no.
Okay. Any clarifying questions from the commission on the testimony provided? All right. Public testimony portion of this hearing, ZA-2022-001, is now closed. Is the commission ready for discussion? I assume so. So let's see. Vice Chair Edge.
There we go. Thank you, Chair. So yeah, this is a pretty straightforward package of code amendments. We have to comply with state law, and that's what staff is proposing we do. And so we kind of looked at this in our work session, and we're kind of looking at ways that we could maneuver a little bit, and there really isn't. So I'm comfortable with sending this, forwarding this on to City Council as it's drafted, and just kind of leaving it at that. There's not much for us to do here.
Thank you, Commissioner Massey.
I too am supportive of this measure, but I would add a little bit of commentary here, is that I think that this is a a tool that will promote home ownership with the ability to subdivide the lots. And home ownership has historically been the most viable avenue to produce intergenerational wealth. And so I'm all on board with this.
Thank you, Commissioner Massey. Is there any other discussion amongst the commission? Members of the commission, rather? Okay, if there is no additional conversation here, then I will entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve file ZA-2022-001.
Second.
All right. It has been recommended for, it's been, excuse me, all those in favor? Aye. All right. All opposed? Seeing no hands raised. All right. Thank you very much. We have approval for ZA-2022-001. This decision is a recommendation to City Council, which will make the final decision after public hearing. Please see planning staff for details concerning the City Council hearing date and process. With that, we move on to other business. Do commissioners have any other business for discussion? Seeing no hands raised, I will move on. Do commissioners have any other items for discussion? All right. Commissioner Hemer.
I'll be brief. I still have an hour and a half.
We are holding all comments to 2 minutes maximum and start the clock now.
So first of all, happy Easter and Passover to everybody. And second of all, the plant sales are coming up, which is Mother's Day. I know we'll see each other before then, but for the Friends of the Letting Library, you have to pre-register to get to theirs. Theirs is the 7th, 8th, and the 14th at Milwaukie Floral. Milwaukie Garden Club is holding theirs at Milwaukie Museum. And the Ardenwald Johnson Creek NDA is holding theirs on an address on Balfour Street on the 22nd. So don't go out and go buy your plants in the nursery. Save and get them here, right here in Milwaukie, and help support some great causes.
Awesome. Thank you, Commissioner Hammer. Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay, Vera, could you provide us with the forecast of future meetings?
So on April 19th, so next Tuesday, you all have a joint meeting with the City Council starting at 4 p.m. So I'm sure it's on your calendars already. And then on April 26th, we have a continued hearing for the Home Ave replat. And that's what we have until, at this point, we don't have any items on the May 10th schedule, but you'll see something if we end up canceling that hearing. But then on the 24th, we have the continued 58th Drive, and I believe there's another item that Brett is handling regarding the high school. It's not a sign. It's something else about the high school. So there might be, so it looks like I think there will be a couple of hearings on the 24th, but stay tuned for an email regarding the May 10th scheduled meeting date.
Oh, great. Thank you. And with that, Commissioner Massey.
Just a point of clarification, is the joint meeting, will that be at the City Hall, or will it?
Yes, I believe so, and City Council is holding hybrid meetings,
Okay.
So yes.
I wasn't sure based upon the fact that we changed ours, so that's prompted my question.
Yes, they are continuing with the hybrid meetings.
Great. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. Anyone?
A motion to adjourn.
It's been motioned. Do I have a second? All right, it's been moved
Second.
and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Night.